Well, hello, boys and girls. It's really great to be in your classrooms this week. Today, I'd like to talk to you about giving to others. We're getting ready to celebrate one of my favorite holidays in November, which is Thanksgiving. And of course, Thanksgiving is a day that we give thanks for all the things that we have, all the things that have been bestowed upon us. And when you think about Thanksgiving, giving thanks, you also think about giving to others. Giving to others is a very important part of our lives. It's not only important for us to get the things that we want and need, but it's also important to think of others. So, as you are celebrating your Thanksgiving with your parents and your family, there might be a time during your intercession where you decide to clean out closets or to clean out drawers and to get rid of maybe clothes that don't fit you anymore since you've grown up tall, or get rid of puzzles or games or toys that you don't play with anymore. Instead of throwing them in the trash, you can certainly give those away to families in need. A family in need is someone who maybe can't afford to buy new clothes or can't afford to buy new toys or new puzzles or new books. So you can certainly box up the items that you no longer need anymore or want anymore or play with anymore. You can box those items up and donate them. Here on our campus, we have a big yellow box in the parking lot that is near the kindergarten drop off area. And in that yellow box, you can place your items and they will go to the Ronald McDonald House. The Ronald McDonald House will donate the items that you've given to families in need. And so I found a really neat story that's called The Spiffiest Giant in Town. And in this story, you will be able to see that the giant is actually a really nice person who likes to donate items to those who need them. Let's see what this story is all about.
Peter here for the Miami Children's Museum Theater Troupe. And this month is back to school month. Time to get pencils and papers and maybe some new school clothes. And we'd like to celebrate this by telling you a story about a giant who is in need of some nice, spiffy clothes. And you'd be surprised what he does with them. We present to you The Spiffiest Giant by Julia Donaldson, sponsored by the Florida Dairy Farmers. The Spiffiest Giant in Town by Julia Donaldson. Pictures by Axel Scheffler. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the same old patched up gown. I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town, he said sadly. But one day, George noticed a new shop. It was full of spiffy clothes. So he bought a spiffy shirt, a spiffy pair of pants, a spiffy belt, a spiffy striped tie, some spiffy socks with diamonds on the sides, and a pair of spiffy shiny shoes. Now I'm the spiffiest giant in town, he said proudly. George left his old clothes behind in the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the sidewalk stood a giraffe who was sniffling sadly. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my neck, said the giraffe. It's so very long, it's so very cold. I wish I had a long, warm scarf. Cheer up, said George, and he took off his striped tie. It didn't match my socks anyway, he said, and he wound it round and around the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. Thank you, said the giraffe. As George strode home, he sang to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look at me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town." George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my sail," said the goat. "It blew away in the storm. I wish I had a strong new sail for my boat." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his new white shirt. "It kept coming untucked anyway," he said, as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. It made a magnificent sail. "Thank you," said the goat. George strode on, singing to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. But look at me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town." George came to a tiny ruined house. Besides the house stood a white mouse with a lot of baby mice. They were all squeaking. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's our house," squeaked the mother mouse. "It burned down, and now we have nowhere to live. I wish we had a nice new house." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. "It was giving me blisters anyway," he said, as the mouse and her baby scrambled inside. The shoe made a perfect home for them. "Thank you," they squeaked. George had to hop along the road now, but he didn't mind. As he hopped, he sang to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, my shoe is a house for a little white mouse, but look at me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town." George came to a campsite. Beside a tent stood a fox who was crying. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my sleeping bag," said the fox. "I dropped it in a puddle. I wish I had a warm, dry sleeping bag." "Hurry," said George, and he took off one of his socks with diamonds on the sides. "It was tickling my toes anyway," he said, as Fox snuggled into it. It made a very fine sleeping bag. "Thank you," said the fox. George hopped on, singing to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, my shoe is a house for a little white mouse, and one of my socks is a bed for a fox. But look at me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town." George came to a big squishy bog. Beside the bog stood a dog who was howling. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's this bog," said the dog. "I need to get across, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. I wish there was a safe, dry path." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his spiffy new belt. "It was squeezing my tummy anyway," he said, and he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said the dog. The wind started to blow, but George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, my shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat, my shoe is a house for a little white mouse, one of my socks is a bed for a fox, my belt helped the dog cross the bog, but my pants are falling down. I'm the coldest giant in town." Suddenly, George felt sad and shivery and not at all spiffy. He stood on one foot and thought, "I'll have to go back to the shop and buy some more clothes," he decided. He turned around and hopped all the way back to the shop. When he got there, it was closed. "Oh no," cried George. He sank down onto the sidewalk, and a tear ran down his nose. He felt as sad as all the animals he had met on his way home. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. George took a closer look. "My gown!" he yelled. "My dear old gown and sandals!" George put them on. They felt wonderfully comfortable. "I'm the coziest giant in town," he cried, and he danced back home along the road. Outside his front door stood all the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. "Come on, George," they said. "Open it." George untied the ribbon. Inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and a card. "Look inside the card, George," said the animals. George put the crown on his head and opened the card. Inside it said, "You gave your scarf to a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped the dog cross a bog. So here is a very fine crown to go with the sandals and gown of the kindest giant in town." Well, he may not be the best dressed giant in town, but he surely is the nicest one. And that may be the most important thing of all. Bye.
Okay, boys and girls, so as you can see, George the Giant got some new clothes, but then he ended up seeing other people in need and decided, maybe I'll share my new clothes with people in need and people who really need things. And I'll just go back to wearing my regular old clothes. There was really nothing wrong with them. They were comfortable and I enjoyed them. So, see, boys and girls, sometimes we ask for things that we really don't need, or we buy things that we really don't want, or that we just want. Maybe we don't really need it. So, it's important to learn the difference between wants and needs. And I know last year when you were in kindergarten, your teachers taught you about wants and needs. And just remember, there's always someone out there who might need something, and it might be something that you want, just like George the Giant. So, the lesson here, boys and girls, is to always, always, always think of others. That's one of the most beautiful things you can do. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family. It's coming up here pretty soon, and I hope you have an amazing intercession. Thank you for listening, boys and girls. Bye bye.